I'd like to share a story with you about a fascinating event that I attended in April of this year in Princeton, New Jersey in the US. And this was called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Futures Gathering. And it was a gathering of people from around the world, from myself from Australia, but from North America, from South America, from Europe, from the Middle East, from Africa, coming together to consider what are the things that as D&I practitioners we need to be thinking about to be ready for the future. And the reason for this gathering was because we're experiencing unprecedented change in our societies globally. And there are these mega trends, things like changes in demography, changes in the economy, technology, climate change. One of the things we did at this gathering was to look at the idea of the year 2030. And we picked 2030 because that's the next target date for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we felt strongly that it was important to link our work in diversity and inclusion to these goals. We met for 3 days using open space technology, which many of you would be familiar with, to develop what are the emerging trends and what are the game changers? What do we need to be looking at as diversity and inclusion practitioners in order to be ready for this future that's coming and that in many cases is here now? So this gathering was sponsored by 2 organizations, one the Center for Global Inclusion, which was responsible for the benchmarks that we talked about before, and the other, the Future Work Institute. So we had D&I practitioners and futurists getting together. And I'd like to share with you a short video that gives you a little bit of a flavor of what this gathering of people was like.
Be an integrity, be the steward of having all voices heard, be willing to be uncomfortable, and be open to making the impossible possible.
During the course of the day, let's have dialogue and let's get into meeting.
What we're going to do during past 2 is we're going to do enactments with each other. No words.
I don't know what to make of this.
I know, right? How perfect is this universe? Gives us what we need.
Decolonizing is both an internal process that I have to do for myself, as well as an external process about the ways we are together. What ended up happening is, in the group, we had to decolonize ourselves.
A lot of the reasons why there are these problems in the world is because people are afraid. And to progress authentically is to acknowledge the fear, to have an awareness of it, an awareness of ourselves, and an empathy for other people.
Regardless of the color of our skin, the country of our birth, our abilities or disabilities. When we live heart, then we all belong.
So as you can see, it was quite an event. When we think about standing in the future, what do we mean by that? And there's some things I'd like to share with you that came out of the conference, both some ideas about standing in the future, but also what were the game changers that we came up with. So standing in the future really to the planners of this project meant setting aside the present political and economic situation, whether you're happy or sad about it. Can we set that aside for a moment to really place ourselves in the future? And as much as we can we let go of our own issues, our own job concerns, our own problems at home, and really be strategic thinkers about the future? Stepping outside the boundaries that we often put ourselves in and thinking about innovation and creativity in our own work. It's about being open to change. Whether we see the glass as half empty or the glass is half full, at least you got to go into the future, get out of the past, get out of even the present, and avoiding coming up with the answers, to let this process evolve organically and not presupposing what the outcomes are. So this was the sort of mindset that we all attempted to go into this conference with, and we found it pretty challenging to really step into the future. And yet we think it's important to strive to do it. So coming out of this conference, there were some game changers that we identified. There were 9 of them. Now, these are not cast in stone. It's an evolving process, and this whole project, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Futures project, this 3-day gathering was just one piece of it. And it's something that you can get involved in if you would like to by contacting the Center for Global Inclusion, and we'll give you ways to do that in a moment. But let me share these game changers with you. So one was around polarities. How do we mend our divided societies that are becoming increasingly polarized? Another was moving beyond capitalism and the roots of colonization. And this became, as you saw in the video, talking about not only colonization in terms of history, but the colonization of our own thinking. And how do we get past that? There were things around transforming the educational system, including the idea of human libraries. There was the topic of identity fluidity. There was a focus on migration, immigration, and integration of people moving around the world. There was one around diversity, equity, and inclusion advocates being future fluent, so that those of us in the D&I field or DEI field are very well aware of what the future trends are. What do we need to be dealing with? One of those trends was around technology and human integration or fusion. So things like the idea of enhanced singular individuals, so enhanced humans. Who's going to have access to that technology and who is not? And I raised the story at the conference of, here we are talking about integrating humans with technology, when a couple of months before I was working in Papua New Guinea, right next to villages who had no electricity. So how do we manage some of those aspects? There was a topic around breaking DEI boundaries. So how do we engage the missing voices, and particularly in an interdisciplinary way? Who's missing from our profession? And then there was a whole topic around busting the binaries of health, age, and ability. So how do we get past our binary thinking in these areas? So as a way to finish off this section, I might ask you to consider what's challenging you at the moment. What are the tough questions you might need to ask yourself? And if you were to stand in the future, what are the game changers that you would come up with?